Hi everyone, this is Jiggie, a portrait and wedding photographer from the Philippines, and welcome to the channel. So in this video, I'm finally gonna give you what you guys have been requesting for a long time, a very simple editing video. So I'm gonna show you how I enhance this image into this in a few simple steps. So before anything else, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel and would want to learn more about off-camera flash photography, then this channel may be for you. So you might want to consider subscribing, and while you're at it, click that notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. And if you want to see more of my images, you could always find me on Instagram. It's at Jiggie Alejandrino. Now, if you also want to see how I shot that image that I showed you in the intro of this video, I'll put a link in the description below. Basically, I just shot that image with one speed light and no conventional modifier. So also, I'd like to take this opportunity to announce that I will be conducting one-on-one workshops very soon. It's going to be called Beyond Ambient Light. And if you want to know more about that, send me a DM in Instagram. Okay, so with all those things out of the way, basically, these are the things that I use for editing photos. I have my Tourbox here, and I have a Wacom Tablet. So my primary raw conversion software is Capture 121, and I chose this because I do love the way it renders colors. And secondly, it has shortcut keys. The shortcut keys allows me to edit or adjust specific things like my exposure, my brightness, my contrast, my highlights, my shadows, and technically the things that I just edit. In other words, I only touch my white balance, my exposure, and my brightness more often than not. And aside from that, I don't do too much with my images. And that's one thing that's very important, is when you actually shoot, try to get it as close to good or as close to perfect as you can in camera, so you don't spend too much time in front of the computer doing post-processing like this. So the first thing that I would want to do is really get my exposure to how I want it to be. So all I have to do is press Q and my arrow keys to get my exposure to how I want it to be. And from here, I am actually just looking at this area here. This is the black part that I want to maintain to be black but with detail, even if my face is still underexposed. Okay? So now that I have my exposure correct, let me adjust my white balance because I want this a bit warmer. So I'm just pressing the number 1 and the arrow keys there. So here you can see like W, I can actually adjust the contrast. If I press E, I can adjust the brightness. If I press R, I'm gonna adjust the saturation. And then if I press A, highlights, S for shadows, etc. Okay? So from here, I'm actually satisfied with the way this one looks and this area looks, but the face for me is a bit underexposed. So I want to do selective adjustment just on the face, and I'll do that by creating a new filled adjustment layer. And I won't touch my exposure anymore, rather I will actually adjust just the brightness of the face. And I make sure that I'm looking just at the face. So now that I have the brightness the way I want it to be, I'll get my radial tool and basically mask away all the other parts except for the face that's bright. And I have to be careful to make sure that it looks very seamless, as if the light was naturally coming from here. I'm just basically enhancing the light that was already there. I can't put light that wasn't there, so I'm just enhancing light that was already there. Okay, so with that, afterwards, I'll probably do a bit of vignette just to focus more on her. There we go. And let me see, I think my adjustment might still be too little. Adjust the brightness a bit more, bring this one up here, and we're good to go. So from there, we basically just right click this, export a variant, and choose the destination, like here, editing demo, and export it as Photoshop. So here in Photoshop is where these two devices actually stand out, the Wacom Tablet and the Tourbox Editing Console. The Wacom Tablet is basically for me to be able to remove some of the imperfections in the skin easily. It's easier than a mouse or a trackpad. But this Tourbox is the one that made it so much simpler. In other words, there are things that are very essential to me when I'm editing. One is the full screen mode, the space bar, undo, clone stamp, healing brush, patch tool, and the paint brush. So I have it all here basically as shortcut tools, plus the brush size and the zoom mode. So I'll show you now. If I press this one represents the full screen mode, so that when I press it, automatically the image becomes full screen for easier editing. I have here to zoom in and zoom out. There. This one is brush size. This one is undo. These two buttons basically correspond to specific actions that I want to use all the time, or I use all the time. This is my brush tool. This is my healing brush tool. This is my patch tool, and this one is my clone stamp tool. This particular button here shifts from background to foreground. Let's say if I need this to be white, background to foreground. And this is my alt tools for me to be able to use with my clone stamp tool and at the same time with my paint brush. Okay, so when you look at this image, basically, there are a few things that I would want to edit. Like I would want to remove this dark spots here, clean out the skin a little bit. So let's start with that. So I have here my actions for high frequency. So with the high frequency way of removing this part here, I am actually not removing it, but just making it lighter, because those imperfections are basically just because of darkening of skin. And again, here, I will put it on my brush tool. Then I will use my alt tool to take a point sample of basically the skin that I want to, or the color of the skin that I want to replace this part with. I'll bring down my flow to about 5%. And just basically start brushing it in. So look at the advantage of this one here, this knob here. It allows me to make the brush size bigger or smaller on the fly. So it just makes things a lot faster. So I'll take another point sample there so I can remove this part here. And maybe with a spacebar tool here so I can move around, I can remove some blemishes here too. There we go. And basically that's it. So from there, I merge it, make a new layer, and I'll press this one to bring out my healing tool and just take away a few blemishes here and there. Okay, so now that I'm done fixing a bit of the blemishes, maybe I will actually remove some of these also. Let me see. Oh, here. In her arm, I will now take my patch tool and just remove this part here. There we go. And we're good. Okay. Then we'll press this button now to bring up my clone stamp to fill up the parts that that the background didn't reach. Okay, so with the alt tool, click a point sample here and fill up those areas with my clone stamp tool. So here I can zoom in again. Look how quick and efficient it is because of this Tourbox, and at the same time the Wacom tablet makes controlling the mouse a lot easier. There we go. Very good. I think we are actually good with that. All I have to do now is press this button here, and this one is actually my sharpening tool or my sharpening action. So with my sharpening action, basically what I do is just add a bit more contrast to the image and then mask everything except for the portions of the face and the body that I want sharp. Let me show you. So right now it did its action, or it did what it's supposed to do. All I have to do now, it's mask so that you don't see it. So I take my brush tool again and I brush in the areas that have been sharpened. So that's why I call it my contrast sharpening, because I am sharpening via contrast. Okay, so it's basically just the nose, the eyes, the lips, and of course the hair. Doesn't really have to be perfect, but more or less. There we go, and the clothes. Now the reason why I do this is because it gives the illusion of the skin being smoother again, since everything else is sharper. Plus it makes those certain areas of the image pop out. Like look at this eye, look at the way the eyes pop out. All right. So from there, all I have to do now is save it. And then after I've saved it, I actually convert it now for web, basically just resizing it to 2048 and converting the color from Adobe RGB to sRGB. Because you have to remember that if you're shooting in Adobe RGB, which is a wider color gamut, you will need to make that smaller or make it converted to sRGB so that it shows properly in the websites that you are uploading it to. Okay, so from there, I just press my play button again for my action, then I save it as JPEG in my desktop or wherever you want to save it. And as you can see, I can embed the color profile sRGB. Okay. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, click that notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. And if you want to see more of my images, you could always follow me on Instagram. It's at Jiggie Alejandrino. And remember, it is also on Instagram where I will be announcing the dates of the final dates of my online workshops. Okay, so till the next video.